Welcome to Crooners and Coffeeshops. My name is Heather. Today I have Valerie Lighthart here to discuss her musical endeavors, as well as some other fun things. Valerie, we would love to hear about how you got started in music.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to kind of share my journey, share my experience. I've always been very invested in music just as an art form. I remember when I was little, I used to sing all the time. My first grade teacher would let me put on little shows for the class because I wouldn't stop singing. So she'd be like, "Wait for Friday, and then you can sing for everybody." So I'd be like, "Okay," I would bide my time and wait for my time of the week. So I've always been really interested in singing. I would say that I got more serious about songwriting when I was about 18 and I got my first guitar and I learned how to play it. And I feel like just even, when you're first learning something, just having those few chords to be able to put together really just unlocks so much creative potential because now you can really just hit the ground running. So I started writing then and I did my first recording. It was I'll Be Damned a couple years ago with Heaven and Will Bush of Immortal Girlfriend. I met them, I modeled in their music video, and then we all just got along really well. We just vibed creatively, very much so, and we ended up collaborating on that first single and then the subsequent two EPs, VAL and the Places EP.
It sounds like you got yourself into a really good musical partnership, which is always a blessing for sure.
Yeah, they're great to work with. They're a lot of fun.
Awesome to hear. And speaking of your music, you've actually released two amazing singles, Love and Money and your recent release, Savior. So we're super happy about that. We always love new music. We would love to hear about how different or similar the songwriting, promotion, and recording process were between the two singles, as well as any upcoming works that you might have.
Absolutely. So, yeah, they were both a ton of fun to work on, and I was able to work with immensely talented producers on both of those projects. With Savior, I did that song with Crystal Knives, and then with Love and Money, I did the song with Tim Wolf from Four Giants. And it was absolutely just an honor being able to work with people who had such a knowledge and passion for the craft. With Love and Money, I kind of did most of the songwriting at home on my big sister's old hand-me-down electric guitar. So just with my little notebook, kind of figuring out the themes behind it, the idea, and just getting it all down. And then I went and took it into the studio, and we got to really flesh out the instrumentation and the soundscape, and just kind of how we wanted to communicate the emotional idea through the sounds that we used. So that was a lot of fun. And then it was released and promoted by a record label that I was working with at the time. They're called N43, and they just did really wonderful things with it. They kind of hit the ground running with that single. And then with Savior, that was with Crystal Knives. And we started with that track from zero. We kind of, he had some lyrics and I had some melodic ideas, and we kind of just recorded and then re-recorded and re-recorded. And it became very much this living thing that was constantly moving and taking different shapes and taking different forms. And then we got it to a point where we felt really good about it. And that was an independent release. And it was my first one since I'll Be Damned. So it was really cool to challenge myself and kind of see what I could do on my own 2 feet,
Yeah, it's always good to hear about how different each process is, because especially with working independently as opposed to working with the label or, a company that can actually do it for you. And it's always fun to hear how different the experiences are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that each has its own kind of pros and cons. It's really fun to work with a team and I think you can get a lot done, but it's cool to challenge yourself and see what you can do on your own. And for the Savior premiere, I think I premiered it through Milwaukee Record, which is the same group that I put out I'll Be Damned with. So it was kind of a cool little throwback moment, you know what I mean? Of a reunification.
It came full circle in a way.
Yeah, I came full circle.
Yeah. We'd love to hear about how the lyrical themes came to be as well.
So I had this idea of doing a trio of EPs that kind of catalog different feelings about like my own personal femininity and kind of unpacking like my complicated feelings around womanhood. And each EP has a character who kind of like personifies the emotional ideas behind it. So the first one is the goddess. And the idea for the goddess is like the goddess of love. So it's lush, it's emphatic. It's kind of this image that we're fed of womanhood through like pop culture and social media. So I kind of wanted to create something that was like a caricature of that. You know what I mean? And then tie in a lot of my own personal tastes for like folklore and just like this over the top, like moon goddess fairy tale aesthetic. So it was kind of like a marriage of these different ideas to kind of depict this very over the top and emphatic and very lush character. So a lot of the lyrics came from just trying to channel her and figure out who she is and kind of what she would have to say.
That's so fun to hear about how you were just like, okay, each EP needs to have its own character, because I feel like it's almost like concept album territory, and I love concept albums. And it's just so fun to hear about how the idea starts in someone's head and everything.
Thank you so much. I love concept albums too. I have such an affinity for them. And my background is more in like long form fiction and like film work. So it's fun to kind of take those ideas on like narrative and character and kind of apply that to like the musical realm.
Always using your skill sets when you least expect them in a way.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I like kind of taking a narrative lens to the tunes.
And kind of going into what you were mentioning about your kind of like almost issues with how womanhood, quote unquote, is portrayed. As a female artist, do you feel that women in the music industry or even in the entertainment industry overall in general, do you think that they need to portray themselves in certain ways in order to be successful?
I feel like both yes and no in a weird way. I feel like there are so many just trailblazing, incredible female or femme identifying artists who kind of are breaking that mold and doing really creative and ingenious and special things that I'm like stoked about. But I feel like the cultural programming that we're kind of fed from a very young age is deeply rooted in the idea that the way we present ourselves and our appearance are like the biggest social capital that we can have. So it's kind of walking this line between like, what is my perception of myself? And what do I understand are like the ideas that I have of myself that are not my own. You know what I mean? The ideas that I have of myself that are things that I've kind of been exposed to and then therefore internalized. So I think that kind of trying to unpack this box of femininity, a lot of it is trying to separate out what genuine empowerment is and what genuine self-love and self-expression is versus performative femininity, performative sexuality, and this idea of this woman that society kind of wants to create and then consume. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I feel like it's been changing for a while, which is always a good thing. And, is a hope for the future, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I think that these larger pervasive ideas are so difficult not to internalize, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And a fun question for you. If you could choose three artists to go on a world tour with, who would you choose and what would you name your tour?
So I think if I had to choose three, my number one is Hosier. I'm like such a Hosier fan. I love everything that he's ever made. So Hosier, probably George Ezra. I'm a big George Ezra fan, and Joni Mitchell. They wrote three of my favorite albums ever. Hosier self-titled, George Ezra's Wanted on Voyage, and Joni Mitchell's Blue. And I think I would probably call it like the Sweet Music Tour because Hosier has a single called Almost Sweet Music. And I feel like all three of those artists create music that has a certain tenderness to it that I really kind of enjoy. It's like there's an earnesty. Does that make sense?
I love that tour name. I think it's perfect.
Thank you.
And it's kind of funny that you brought up like the tenderness. I was like, you never really hear music being described as tender nowadays. Maybe like lighthearted is more the term that everybody likes to kind of put out there. But tender is just one of those like old timey words that it's like so cute when you hear it.
Yeah, I love it. And I feel like it's such a unique emotional space, and like I just have such a love for things that are like tender and earnest.
Absolutely. And kind of going into like your experience outside of the music realm, you've also dabbled in photography and modeling and also acting on top of your musical endeavors, which is awesome. You're a badass.
Thank you.
How did you pre COVID, or do you kind of balance your activities with your personal life?
I think I balanced my activities with my personal life by kind of like almost mixing the two, you know what I mean? Like most of the friends that I have are interested in photography or also do modeling or also do acting or also like make music or write poetry. So it's kind of like I tend to surround myself with both friends and collaborators. So that way I'm kind of doing like two in one. Like my best friend in the world, I love this girl. She plays piano in my band. So we were kind of able to like marry the friendship with also our creative pursuits. And then another one of my close friends is a photographer whose work I adore. And like we'll just hang out and we'll also shoot. So I kind of built my life in a way in which I am surrounded by like brilliant and amazing collaborators who I'm also super lucky to call friends.
Yeah, it's always good to have those as well in your life. So it's I feel like it's a rarity where you can have a friendship and also have a business relationship in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's a kind of like synchronicity and a kind of like kismet when that comes together that's like just so much fun to kind of like enjoy and rock out with.
Yeah, the universal line for you to meet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you could give your younger self any advice in regards to what you've experienced within music or within life in general, what advice would you give her?
I think I would tell my younger self to take note because I feel like I've been very privileged in my ability to work with people who know so much more than me, which is like incredible. And I'm learning how to like do my own production, which is very empowering and very exciting, but also very overwhelming. So I think I would have told my younger self, like, anytime you're in a writer's room and you're working with a producer who's doing something really cool, or you're working with a writer who you really are enjoying, just like ask them a lot of questions, bring your notebook, and don't be afraid to like just take notes and just write it all down and organize that information so that you have it forever.
Yeah, and I mean, you're doing it now, so it's better late than never.
True, better late than never. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes you don't even really think about it until you're like, wait, I should, like you were saying, I should have probably asked a bunch of questions while I was with this person.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's always like stuff that you want to go back and ask, but you also don't want to be like that person that's just like at 2 a.m. Hey, do you remember when you did this and it sounded really cool? Like, how do I do that?
I have that problem all the time.
I'm glad you relate. I'm glad we're on the same page about it.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you hope that your audience will take away from your music?
My goal with my music is that I want you to be able to take out of it whatever it is that you need that day. You know what I mean? Whether you just need a space to kind of like have fun and dance and let loose and experience that freedom, I want people to be able to have that. Or if they want to feel like a complicated emotion that they have is being validated or seen or understood, I want people to take that away. I think with this upcoming trio of EPs with the By Moonlight series, the messaging is a little bit more specific, and I kind of want to highlight some of the more intricate and difficult to verbalize experiences or baggage that comes with having complicated feelings about womanhood and femininity. You know what I mean? So, like, the goddess is about performative femininity, performative sexuality, and then the witch is about autonomy and both experiencing that autonomy in visceral ways and experiencing that autonomy being taken away. And then the Banshee, which is the third installment, is kind of about the very complicated and difficult, like wrathful feelings that are really hard to unpack. So it's about these very specific women's issues that I feel like I want to open up a larger cultural conversation about. But I think for my entire body of work, like first song to last song that I release, right before I die, I want it to be versatile enough that people can see themselves in it and people can feel understood by it.
I definitely feel very good vibes from what you've released so far. And I'm guessing that the audience will also take away, like you said, what they need for that day and such.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of end off the interview portion, apart from the upcoming trio of EPs that we get to look forward to, what other big exciting things are you working on?
Oh, I'm super stoked. January 8th, I'm releasing a music video for Savior through 889 Radio Milwaukee. I'm super excited. It's very aesthetic. I got to shoot it at this amazing place down in Illinois called the Boutique Photo Loft, which is like this very aesthetically designed Victorian. It's like got a little 1920s. It's got a little Rococo. It's like so many of my favorite aesthetics, like operating within one space. So I'm really excited to put that out in the world.
I need to go to this place. It's everything that I love too. I'm such like an old soul. Like whenever I see like the Victorian era, the Roaring Twenties and such, I'm just like, oh, I wish I was there. But also, I probably wouldn't even be alive to live until like almost 30 in those times.
They were tough times to be alive in, but boy, those aesthetics.
Yes, the visual aspect. If I could just pick that up and put them, in 2021,
Yeah.
that would be perfect with all of our medical advances.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Absolutely. I feel the same way.
yeah. Where can everybody find you online?
So I can be found on like pretty much all streaming services, Apple Music, Pandora, Spotify. I post a lot on my Instagram at Valerie Lighthart. And I also have a Facebook page that you can follow and a website, ValerieLighthart.com.
Awesome. Thank you. So here at Crooners and Coffeeshops, we love our coffee, obviously, and we still want to support local businesses even through rougher times. Today I got to go to a coffee shop that's right next to my work. It's called Coral Tree Cafe. There's a few of them around here in LA, and I got myself a caramel latte because caramel is amazing and everybody should drink it and eat it. So underrated. Valerie, do you have any cafes, any coffee shops that you would like to shout out today?
Absolutely. I am going to recommend if you're in Milwaukee to stop by Rochambeau. It is so cute. I feel like every time I go in, the baristas are just so friendly and warm and energetic, and the ambiance is amazing. There's so much art. All of the walls are like fun and interesting colors. And I feel like every single time I go there, I run into at least 3 creatives that I know. It's like the creative coffee hub.
Everybody that's a creative tends to love their caffeine, which is how this podcast started. I always joke about it to people. I'm just like, yeah, everybody that's a creative is some kind of caffeine addict.
Oh yeah, coffee lovers all day in all the ways.
Yes. Well, Valerie, thank you so much for joining me today. It was awesome to get to chat with you, and we definitely can't wait for the trio of EPs and the new video for Savior as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated an opportunity to sit down with you and just hash everything out. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Stay safe out there, everyone, and stay caffeinated.